Hey guys, Professor Bill, Comic Book University, and Sensational Spider-Man Self-Improvement. It almost sounds like Home Improvement. I really don't like that name. Like that just it doesn't make any sense to me why they would do that silly name. But anyway, this is still a really historical kind of comic book. Does anybody remember Randy Schueller? At the time, he was the kid who came up with the idea for the black suited Spider-Man. And what do you call it? Jim Shooter liked the idea so much that he gave the guy a couple bucks. He bought the character, and it was like, hey, all it said was black suit Spider-Man. He actually goes into a lot more detail. Jim Shooter does in my exclusive interview that I did with him a couple months ago, and it's just a beautifully happy coincidence that they finally decided to put together that story from that original script that he'd sent in. I'm going to talk more about that in a hot minute. And first, we're going to talk about who made this book. So, Burn Job, script by Peter David, based on a plot by Randy Schueller. Pencils, Rick Leonardi, Victor Olazaba on inks, and Rachel Rosenberg on colors. There's a backup story in here with no power, script, plot, and pencils by Tom DeFalco and Ron Frenz, inks by Sal Buscema, what? And colors by Chris Sotomayor. The letterer is VC's Travis Lanham, and the cover artists are Mark Bagley, John Dell, and Laura Martin, with Stan Lee with Steve Ditko creating the character Spider-Man. So check it out. We got, you remember Firebrand? He's a villain that we don't see very often, but we get to see him here, and I'm happy that we get to see him here, and we get a little backstory with him, and this is actually a really cool story. And we find Randy Schueller's original plot point for anyway. this was actually a pretty good story. I liked this story a whole lot. Where does it go from here? It goes nowhere. This is completely isolated from the standard 616 Marvel Universe or anything like that. This is just simply a completely outside story, has nothing to do with anything, and it is not a part of Marvel continuity. It is what it is. It's a standalone with nothing associated with it. And I'm glad with that. Not that the story was at all bad. It was cool. I like that. I don't like car alarms. Like, seriously, do car alarms actually work? Nobody goes and says, hey, it's a car alarm. Anyway, so what have you now? You got it's a story, it's standalone, and it's fun. And more importantly, they've got the original script for it. We've got 3 pages worth of not necessarily corrections, but and they hardly seem like advice. They're just critiques by Tom DeFalco. There's also that backup story in here, which is actually really solid. And this, can be a part of the standard 616 universe. Why not? The second part, the second story in here. But to me, honestly, the most important part is this original script, which I'm going to find because it's got to be here somewhere. Come on, damn it. Get over here. Okay, I found it. So they've got the print in here, but they actually, after this introduction, they actually give the regular script, the 3 pages worth of corrections, and they actually got the notes in here from Tom DeFalco himself for that original script. Go and check out for what do you call it? In my interview with Jim Shooter. This was at Aurelia Comic-Con a couple months ago, way up, well, not way up north, but like central Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. This was a really, it's me, of course, a good interview. Anyway, this was a really fun interview that I did where he talks about how this guy, Randy Schueller, wrote in and he's like, here's an idea. Why don't you guys ever do something like, a black suit Spider-Man? And that was the only thing that was said. Black suit. So Shooter goes into why he thought that was a good idea, but makes sense. Yeah, okay, cool. So he paid him and said, I'm gonna, here's a check. I want you to, write out an actual plot for how this works, and let's see what's up. Randy Schueller was just a kid at the time. I mean, come on, what was really expected of him, right? And Shooter's the editor-in-chief at the time. He can't do anything else. He's already jacked up to the gills with work to do. So he puts Ron DeFalco in charge of editing the script and trying to make a story out of it. It was reported back to him that there was nothing that he could do with this script. It was just all over the place. There's nothing we could do. So he just said, here, forget it. Let it go. So, yeah, nothing ever really became of that. And then about 2 years later or so, that's when all of a sudden, he'd already, Shooter had already paid for the idea for the black suit. So he says, hey, we're doing the Secret Wars thing. How about we introduce the black suited Spider-Man in that? So they did that, and that's the way it wound up working. But I always wondered, and a few of us who are, into the history of comic books, the comic book historians, we're very interested in what was that original script. Boom, here we go. We actually get to see the original plot that he'd sent in, and then the corrections that Ron Frenz does with this. Now, I got to say this. Ron Frenz, when he wrote this, was kind of a jerk when he did this. Bear with me now, because I loves me some Ron Frenz. Sometimes when we're, I don't know the details of this, and I would love to be able to talk with Mr. Frenz about this, what was going on? What was this? This was, you seemed kind of mean in this, Maybe he was backed up with work. He was just tired. He didn't understand or just didn't care. Didn't know this was a kid. Just whatever. He just looked at this like, what is this? What is this? What, blah, 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 blah. And I don't know if this stuff ever even got back to Randy Schueller. If those corrections ever made it back to him. But the understanding that I got from Mr. Shooter himself was there was nothing that could be done with the script, so they just let it go. They let it fizzle. There's been an interview done with Randy Schueller since, and he talked about how, dude, I don't even care. I just love the idea that the thing actually got made. I got paid. The story got made. My name is, kind of like out there a little bit as somebody who did such and such. Shooter was very respectful to the idea of what nowadays Mr. Schueller had done. And he's like, I don't know if today he was, he became a great writer or not. I don't know. But back then he just wasn't ready. So there. And it is what it is. Go and actually check out the interview. I'll link it to the back of this review. There's a whole lot more details in there about this. A whole lot of details about a lot of things in the behind the scenes of the Marvel Universe with this interview with Mr. Shooter. But yeah, this comic book, if you in any way consider yourself even a prenatal comic book historian, this is actually a really important book. Most importantly, for those 3 pages of script in the back. That is, wow, that's a big deal. That is a really big deal. Anyway, guys, I'm done. Definitely check out this comic book if you like comic book history, because wow. And it's great to see they finally did something with the script. I guess it just took Peter David to be like, yeah, I would love to do something with this. Sometimes you got to find the right guy, right? That's what it's all about. Shooter talks about that too. Professor Bill, Comic Book University. Class dismissed.